My name is Jason Pipe, and I'm going to give a very brief workshop presentation on the pursuit for greater prosody in the EFL classroom. Now, I am going to have to rush through this, so I've got some information on the QR code if you want to look, and you can always email me as well. But how are we going to work on improving their pronunciation? That is always the question, how to teach it. Well, first of all, with pronunciation training, you must be aware that students will be overwhelmed by this when they have to consider other aspects of second language acquisition. Also, when you're introducing pronunciation training, students do not learn equally. And so you need to try to provide materials that make sense so that students can capitalize on in their spoken conversations with their partners. And an important aspect is to make sure that students can conceptualize clearly these aspects of English sounds. So how are you going to apply this? Well, first of all, you need to make sure you apply it at a suitable time and at a suitable level so you don't lose students on the way. You need to be able to enable students to conceptualize each sound patterns and do this while somehow maintaining the fluency. And also, you've got to try to make sure when doing this that you're building their confidence and motivation rather than challenging too far. So it's a bit of a tall order to deal with, and that's why a lot of teachers steer away from it. But it is worth it when you've got certain procedures in place. Now, with pronunciation itself, what do you focus on? Well, I know a lot of teachers seem to focus on the segmentals, like difference between the l and the r sounds, but according to research, it doesn't matter too much. It doesn't impede communication. What you need to do is focus on aspects of speech that will improve comprehensibility and intelligibility. To do so, I would argue that it's important to focus on segmental features, or prosody as it's called, when working on pronunciation practice. Now, it's important to make sure there's a fine balance between fluency and prosody. As I mentioned before, will feel inhibited if they're asked to focus on prosody whilst trying to complete communicative tasks. So it's better to complete the task first and then focus on prosody. Now, the training prosody, well, what is it first? Well, if we look at Japanese more timed pronunciation, for example, this sentence now, a rather low level student might pronounce it this way. English is difficult for me to understand. Okay, whereas a native may say it more like this: English is difficult for me to understand. And so that's where we're aiming for by the end of the year. Aiming for, but not saying it's not impossible. So for students to model these sounds, we can obviously work on listen and repeat. That's useful, but you need to action in how to provide the right sounds, especially the hidden sounds which the learners do not actually notice. The way to do this is that teacher needs to sensitize students to these particular aspects of pronunciation, and to do so, it's important to develop particular sensory motor skills, i.e. the articulators in which the tongue, lips, the mouth, how do they move, because it is a bit different for Japanese, and the manner articulation in how you actually breathe and actually it's a bit different. Okay, student skills as well if they want to sound more natural. Now, in my course I teach at university, I focus on these aspects of segmentals, starting with the vowels, then the word stress, the sentence stress, chunking, tonic syllables, intonation, and finally connected speech. You can teach it in other orders as well, but it depends on the ability of the students. I tend to focus on this side. I also focus on questions as the first way to teach pronunciation. The reason why questions, because it's something which is familiar, something that's used often by students in their task. It enables students to focus more quickly on the pronunciation. It's good for practice, enables analysis, evaluation, and modeling to occur. And you can work on, for example, vowel quality, the word stress, intonation, and reduction as well, and just making these questions. And then from this, you can later apply to other areas of spoken production. So if we look first at vowel quality. Now, if we look at this chart here, you can see that these are basically all the vowel sounds in the English language and how they're generally produced in the mouth. But you need to focus on other aspects too. You need to think about the tongue position, lips rounding, the tense and lax of vowels, that's very important, and also the glides as well. So if we look at, for example, the E and the U sound, I get students to close their eyes and start to notice these high vowel sounds, how they move from the front to the back of the mouth. The eyes need to be closed to do this. So they work from E, U, E, U, and you'll notice the mouth also moves as well. E, and the tongue slightly too. You can work on the low side of the vowel pronunciation, for example, the I, I. So you can see how the mouth is wider for the ah, and compared to the e. As such, you can, but this only can be effective when the eyes close, so that students become more sensitized to these sounds. And that's just the basic vowel sounds as such. I mean, I use these vowel charts so students have more opportunities to practice. But if you look on this slide here, you can see that the Japanese pronunciation of vowels are the middle blue ones, where the vowels are much more lax. They don't have an opportunity to work on the tense vowel sounds. That's why it's quite important to work on this from the start. When then with long vowels, the clue is in the long vowel. Why is it long? Because you're using two vowels in conjunction. So I, for example, is one. So I get students to draw this in their worksheets, okay? And I get them to drill these words like I, mine, why, height, swipe, and so on and so forth with the next vowel. And then I get students to try to make sentence using the words, either on the mine type words or the coat type words, or they can work between them as well, just for basic practice. But importantly, they need to take note of what's going on and start to practice the sounds. So for example, the O and the E, again, get the students to close their eyes and notice the changes in sounds from O, E, O, E. So you can see it's a closed mid sound as such, but it moves from the front to the back of the mouth. Again, to get students to become more active in pronunciation, I've got these worksheets, but it's also important to make sure that they apply this to conversation as well. And they can start to discover for themselves in these worksheets and their ideas of what the long vowel sounds are, for example. And then later on, you can get them to evaluate with others what are actually correct and what aren't correct. And that creates a good discussion itself. It's very good feedback feed forward. And then I would also get students to do these tasks for homework. For example, write a 200, 250 word paragraph on a topic they chose, and they need to capitalize what words they think have got the vowel soundings. And then from that, you can make your own worksheets, which you can ask questions like, which words in capitals are correct? They have the correct long vowel sounds or not? Which ones are not correct? Which ones weren't noticed? And which ones were confusing? So again, it's starting to create more debate about how to pronounce it properly. And then I also have tasks in which from the topic they've chose, I'll make a script and they got to try to pronounce it as properly as possible and also count how many of these long vowel sounds they can find. So that's only vowel stress. Similar techniques are used in other stages as well. So if we look here at word stress, the stress of the contrast of particular words. So if you look at the word computer, right, it's 3 syllables. Okay, we look at the duration, computer. Or we can look at the intensity, computer. Or the pitch, computer. Always sounds exactly the same. But the thing is, the students are focused on one of these 3 aspects initially. Okay. And if we look at words with 2 syllables, baba or baba, I get students to look at these words and then try to pronounce it properly and then make a sentence. Okay. But it's important to remember that this stress does change depending on what the speaker wants to actually say. So in the exercise before, you would have the teacher assist her student because she wants these pupils to succeed. I just noticed I've got a grammar mistake. But it should be the teacher assists a student because she wants these pupils to succeed. But practice is the key. So again, worksheets here to assist and getting students to discover what they're doing right and what they need to work on. So here's a worksheet on pastime activities at high school. And if you look below the text, you can see table, decide, furniture, USA, conclusion, television, understanding. So students need to understand the dress in those words and then try to find a similar one in that text. And then later on, they try to apply it to their own topics as well. And it creates quite a good discussion because they start to realize what they can and can't do again. Basically, have your conversation about hobbies, try to find examples is what I'll say. So this is an example of what they try to do in one paired discussion. And once you discover it, you start to, again, analyze what's occurred. And you can see all those yellow marks are where the students have got it wrong because they are influenced by their katakana pronunciation. But again, when we work on pitch, intensity, and duration, it's a bit of a juggling act. So I would definitely try to focus on one rather than all 3 at one time. Contrast is another key point to focus on as well. And this is especially so because of this schwa sound, this sound here. What does it mean? Well, first of all, it's commonly used. It does reduce the stress sound. It's used in function words, but also unstressed syllables in content words. By using this schwa, it enables a more natural rhythm. And basically, you can change other stressed sounds to unstressed vowel sounds as well. But in a nutshell, it's the most common vowel sound in the English language. So how do you teach it? Well, with treble, first of all, I get them to recognize that it's at the back of the throat. So I get the students put their hands there, and I try to get them to concentrate on the length, pitch, intensity, and how it weakens compared to other sounds. So if we look at the contrast of the schwa and the sounds before and after, remember, focus on the tense and the lax movement, strong and the weak. So if we look here, the da. So example, teacher, mother, worker, wither, need a hand, listen, telephone. Okay, and it works the other way too. But notice, if you teach a schwa by itself, you just won't get the right sound. It needs to be in contrast to a tense sound as well. So let's do it the other way around as well. And try to repeat if you want, but I know I'm going too quickly. So a book, about, this is a pen, unbelievable, unbelievable. I want to go. This is for me. Okay, so you get the idea. And I've got worksheets working on vocabulary as well, just to start the ball rolling, but then you can apply it to sentences as well. Okay, so there we are. There's lots of worksheets. Also, teaching limericks is a really good way to improve this as well. Okay, but I've made a website and I've got all these resources available. This is based on topics students chose, and I've made not just on questions, but on phrases and longer speeches so that students can get a better idea of the pronunciation patterns. So if we look at this one, the schwas, I get students to notice where they are. So I want to move out of my house because I need to get a job as soon as possible. So you can see the schwas there. But limericks, I said, were really important. This is, by the way, an Aston Villa supporter. And this is a limerick. You can see by the dots where the stress is and where the stress isn't. And so if I read this one to you, I once had a blind date with Scylla. I took her to watch Aston Villa. She sang to the crowd and sang very loud, and that's why he threatened to kill her. Boom. But it follows that rhythm pattern on the left-hand side. That's important to know. So if we look at it, the purpose is it's a nonsense poem, makes people laugh generally. Just be careful, there are rude ones out there. The structure, well, the 5 lines, the first, second, and fifth line have the same number of syllables, and the third and fourth have the same number of syllables as well. There's a specific rhythm pattern which students need to attend to. I'll give you another example. The old lady from Rome. There was an old lady from Rome who never could find her way home. She would walk down the street, getting very sore feet, that silly old lady from Rome. So you can see this structure of how it develops. But the idea of the limerick is to get them to focus on contrasting sounds, and also for high levels to reduce the sounds to fit the rhythm. So it could be used quite a few times, this approach as such. So there we go, more materials there, which on my website used, written by myself from students' work themselves because they showed genuine interest in it. Okay, now if we move on to the next one, sentence stress. Do you think your students will be able to understand what it actually is? Sentence stress, we look at the content words and the function words. The contents are the bricks and the function words are basically the mortar. So looking at this sentence here, this is important to understand the rhythm. So contents are in blue and function words are in black. Okay, they all have importance, but basically I get students to work on the questions first of all to get that pattern in the stress. To do so, I would ask students to repeat what I'm trying to say. Questions on your summer. Did you have a pleasant summer vacation? Did you have a pleasant summer vacation? How did you spend your time during the summer? How did you spend your time during the summer? So you can repeat it, but I get them to actually on your summer. To shadow instead at the same time. Did you have a pleasant summer vacation? How did you spend the time during the summer? So you get the idea that stress there. But it's not just on questions. I've got phrases the same way too. So for example here, I love the local traditional dances because it brings back memories. So that's the idea. Okay, building up pressure stops really does help. I mentioned this you can use it as you like, but I would focus on the stops first and get students to read this out. I pretend to try and produce good and grammatically correct dialogues with my partner in class, but it's boring. So what you'll find is a lot of these stress syllables occurs, but there's a build-up stress prior to it. So it creates a lot more contrast in itself. So if I give examples of these stops, you can see the first one. I put the bag there. So you can see put bag is stressed and the blue is at the back. Next one, I took the dog out. So again, you're seeing I took the dog out. So you can see that there's a build up in pressure. And then the final one, I could have gone. Again, could have gone. So we're working on building up pressure. But tongue twisters is really good for this as well. I won't have time to go through them, but I've got worksheets on that. Surprise, surprise. Okay. But it really does help. So here, for example, with the worksheets, I try to get them to find the build up pressure points. So for example, I wanted to study abroad on their English program while at university. And so they work on that side. The videos will help them on that. Other things I work on is this contrasting syllable in the sentence. So it's more like the word focus. So I was running late. Again, got lots of stuff on this. So if you look at the questions, did you have a pleasant summer vacation? What's the most important word? Pleasant. So you'll find that's more stressed with the higher intonation. Did you have a pleasant summer vacation? Or next one, how did you spend your time during the summer? What's the most important word? How did you spend? How did you spend your time during the summer? So you work on these exercises too. Okay. Again, I've got worksheets to help on this side too. So what I do is look for example, I was running late. Intonation goes up, or it can be the opposite way as well. I was running late. All right. But the point is you need to find out which word in that sentence is the key part of communication. So I look at this pyramid way of approaching it. And so what I mean by that, so we look at a chunking phrase like I was running late, then look at the contrasting phrase running late, and then the actual focus word late. Okay. And we do it for the other parts as well. I'm really tired, really tired, really. See, there's a stress there. And then in a sentence too, it can be one long chunk. I was running late. I'm really tired. Okay, so you can see that side. Or you can make into chunks like this. Boom. Where each part is important. I was running late and I'm really tired. Okay. But the important thing about this chunking is the intonation pattern too. Okay. I was running late, not all the way down, and I'm really tired. That's the key point there too. So because the late, the intonation doesn't go all the way down, it's indicating you want to speak more. But it's an uncomfortable situation working on this. And so I get students to choose a topic and then they try to figure out words they can apply it to. Okay, so for example, with holidays, I'll get students to work on these words and make sentences such as this. A noun, I went to a restaurant. Verb, I ate it. Adverb, I ate it quickly. Adjective, I was hungry. And then question word, I have no idea what I ate. So you can see what I'm trying to achieve there. And they work on their own topic. Again, application, more materials as such. You can see the pattern as well. So that's chunk in itself. And it's really important that they can start to analyze language regarding the onset syllable and the tonic syllable. So basically, each sentence has a phrase with a meaning. That's the chunk. And so what you're trying to do is find the tonic syllable, which carries the most meaning, intonation, and then find out where this change begins. That's the onset syllable. So if we have here, where does he live? London. That's a tonic syllable. But if you make it into an answer, a sentence, you'll find that she lives in London. So London's the most important word, but the start of that change is on lives. She lives in London. She lives in London, so I don't see her much. Okay, so you can see this is two chunks in one sentence. All right. It does take a while to understand, but basically the discourse function is falling tones means it's final, non-falling tones mean not finished. Kind of obvious, but you've got to get students to work on their own way to apply it. And just remember that finding the focus word adds music to your conversations as well. Okay, so if we look at this example conversation, I love that photograph. This one, no, that photograph. Yes, I look so young. You still do. You're too kind. You must want something. Can I borrow some money? In a word, no. So you can see how it adds to the actual conversation by working on these contrasts, okay? And then once I finish that, I get students to see the sounds as well. So it's all about trying to notice these parts, and they're not on function words. So let's try this one. Try saying this sentence, okay? I asked if I could borrow some money and she said no. Okay. I asked if I could borrow some money and she said no. So there's three chunks there. Or it could be two chunks or one chunk. Usually natives can make it one, whereas non-natives have more chunks, but that's absolutely fine. So you're getting the right pronunciation patterns. Okay. So continue the sentence. I couldn't come. I couldn't come as I had to finish my work. All right. Try another one. It was fun. Goes all the way down. It was fun. But if you haven't finished, it was fun because I saw my friends. All right. So how about this one? I have a headache. And so you get students to do the same thing with their pairs. And I've given these worksheets to work on it more, no time to talk about it, but they start to analyze where the onset and the tonic syllables are so they can improve their pronunciation. But the key thing is also to split it into chunks. So that's the idea of focused attention on these points. Now, finding your voice is important. This is intonation. The final thing I want to, well, the second from final. Intonation, we kind of understand about what it means. Okay, it's the waves as such in the voice. And general facts, well, basically, there's 2 points to remember. A flat part and a contrasting part. So this is a pen. I'm a teacher. I'm from England. I like to play the guitar. I didn't have breakfast this morning. Okay. Formality would actually have the opposite effect as well. Where are you from? What is your job? Your first language is English, isn't it? What qualifications do you have? Can you sign here? So you can see it works both ways too. All right. But you need to contrast these aspects too. All right. I think it's important. The deadline is tomorrow. You are joking. Intonation is an opportunity to show your true feelings. So, okay. So, for example, this is not bad. This is not bad. This is good, but needs more salt. Could you pass the salt? I could if you say it nicely. Could you please pass the salt? Here you are. And next time, make your own. So apologies for the bad acting, but you can see that from this intonation, it sets certain types of meaning behind what you're trying to say. So what's your reaction to this then? I'm so tired. Tell me about it. I lost my wallet. You're joking. I have to work overtime. Seriously. I got full marks in my test. Really? It took an extra hour to get here. Nightmare. I got lost. What did you do? The last thing I would like to look at is to do with connected speech. Now, there are 5 types. There's elision, catenation, intrusion, assimilation, and the schwa, which I mentioned earlier on. Now, you have to use fine motor skills to deal with this. So again, get the students to understand the placement and manner of articulation. You can use this, which I've got worksheets on to assist, as such about the place and the manner, and also get students to identify how to pronounce it. But if you look at elision, this is where sounds basically disappear. So listen to this very briefly. What does it say? So you get the idea. They're not single, but single ladies. So it's a reduced sound. You can have to pause and look through this. But if you give an example, walked down, the walked the is too much of a hassle to say, so we just reduce it when we speak fast. She walked down, yeah. Another one would be less sugar. We might go less sugar because it's repeating the sound. Or there's the catenation, which is basically linking sounds. So look at this song here. Shape of, so shape of. But again, it links one sound to the other. Usually find the second word is a vowel word. So for example, big opportunity become big opportunity. And the next one, if you look at woke up, the vowel sound the second word again, so it joins together, woke up. Next one is assimilation, where it's affected by the sounds on either side. So listen to this song. Could you be loved? Could you? So it just joins together. From the could and the you becomes could you. All right. So don't you, don't you? It's just a natural joining of those two sounds together. Or did you do it? Did you? Did you do it? Or how's your food? How's your? The y sound instead. So it's quite easy. And the schwa one, as I mentioned before, listen to the song. To the rain. Okay, so you can see the reduction sound there, and it happens everywhere. So using these 5 aspects, it's really good to understand connected speech. And I've got worksheets, but I think it's really important to focus on students analyzing songs they like. They'll learn from it much quicker that way. And there you go. So there is the segmentals. vowel pronunciation, word stress, sentence stress, chunking, tonic, syllables, intonation patterns, and the connected speech in a nutshell. If you want more information, have a look at my website. But overall, just keep working at it, you and the students, and you will notice improvements by focusing on this aspect. So there we go. Prosody training. There's some references. And if you've got any questions, please contact me. If you want me to do any more workshops on this, I'll be happy to do so. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.